So jumping in, what were your expectations for this workshop?
Heard a little bit about it with my teacher that I study with, but not as in depth as the class. So I was curious to do the class and find out more because what I did know I found helpful. And also because when I started taking lessons with my current teacher, I think my daughter was a year old, and obviously like having a baby changes things in general, but also a lot with the pelvic floor, like regardless of if you have a C-section or a natural delivery. I remember one masterclass with Jane Eaglin, and Jane Eaglin talked about it. And that's the only time I ever heard it mentioned ever. There's just that one masterclass. Yeah. And I remember thinking, wow, everybody sounded so much better after she talked about pelvic floor. There was like one student, it was like Kara, I think she was in Jane's studio, and she sang and she started getting her connected to her pelvic floor, and it sounded like 10 times better. And I was like, what's this now? But like it never got like explained or like
Well,
fleshed
and what
out.
does that mean? What does connecting to your pelvic floor mean? It can mean so many things.
Right. Exactly. And it never got like expounded upon. So I was like, well, I don't know, whatever. One thing I've noticed for myself is that I think my breath was too high because I wasn't thinking about releasing my pelvic floor in regards to taking a breath. I think I was thinking of it in terms of support, but I wasn't thinking of it in terms of taking a breath. The simplicity of having that release and then have it in the breath and then having it kind of like stay low and grounded while I sing. It almost like feels like I can kind of just speak on pitch and my throat is like doesn't really get involved at all. And I can feel when if I take a breath and relax my pelvic floor and then feel anchored in my support, that my larynx just stays down and then I don't have to think about it at all.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That's
So
a big
it's
deal.
good. Yeah. It just takes care of more things. I don't have to think about like 10 different things.
Yeah.
You also went into the anatomy of it, which I don't think like I got so in depth with that in just like voice lessons I've taken. It wasn't quite that specific, but I think having it be that specific is really helpful, because it gives you like a visual aid for where things are exactly and what they're doing. Um, so I found that to be helpful and more like in depth than what I had learned previously. What I've noticed with a lot of my students is that when think about breath, they almost like hyperventilate because
Mm.
it's so high. And especially like as they're singing fast pop songs when you have no time to breathe, it feels like. So thinking more about releasing the pelvic floor is a lot better than like trying to get like a fast breath in the middle of a pop song. My female students that studied with men all tucked a lot. Yeah,
Ooh.
so they were like breathing and then they were like tucking everything.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Like a release and then a like immediate like whoosh, like that and then the you could see that like the throat was going like that.
I mean, that's so awesome to hear that just having both the language and the skill now to like share that movement with your students, it fixes
Yeah.
so many things right off the bat. Like,
Yeah. And you have
okay.
to really be aware of that connection with the larynx, I think, because if you're activating something low that you think you're activating and you feel that there's a resistance in the throat or there's a something is activating here in a way that's locking or whatever, then it's like, okay, nope, that's too much.
Yeah, it puts it all into a much greater perspective for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Would you recommend this course to others, or what would you say to someone who is considering this workshop?
Definitely. Yeah. No, I would definitely recommend it. I think that, like I said, there can be like it can be mentioned as like a nebulous thing, like, oh, activate your pelvic floor, or like, release your pelvic floor when you're breathing or whatever. But I think until you can get really specific with the anatomy and specific with like exactly how it connects to the singing, it can be like misused or misinterpreted. So I think it's good to like have the baseline knowledge of exactly what it is in order to do it yourself or teach it or anything like
I
that.
mean, my particular passion about this. It's like, let's just have the specificity of what's actually happening and let's
Yeah.
develop language for what's happening. And then we can make the right choices that we want to make.
Yeah. And you gave like a session as well, which is good. So then there was like that individual working on it too, which is when I like really got into the kind of releasing for breath and stuff like that. So that was great. So it wasn't just like all the information and then you kind of like go home and figure it out yourself. It's like there was some guidance after getting the information. So
Yeah, I think I want to
huge.
keep that anyways. It's my
Absolutely.
favorite part of like being able to connect with people one-on-one.
Yeah.
But it just adds that level of specificity and nuance and ensures that
Yeah.
you're getting the best version of it.
Exactly.